Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Purudikacharya Ashtotar that Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Purudikacharya Ashtotar that Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 18th day of October 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 7, entitled Knowledge of the Absolute, text 21 on page 330. That'll be a different page for you, Dharmaraj. 21. Okay, 721, you got it? Dharma, got it? Okay. Yo yo yam yam. Tanum bhakta Shraddhayarchitum Ichchati Tasya Tasyachalam Shraddham Tameva Vidadhamyaham Yo yo yang yang tanum bhakta Shraddhayarchitum Ichchati Tasya tasyachalam shraddham Tameva vidadhamyaham Yo yo yang yang tanum bhakta Shraddhayarchitum Ichchati Tasya tasyachalam shraddham Tameva vidadhamyaham Yo yo yang yang tanum bhakta Shraddhayarchitum Ichchati Tasya tasyachalam shraddham Tameva vidadhamyaham Dharma. Yo yo yang yang tanum bhakta Shraddhayarchitum Ichchati Tasya tasyachalam shraddham Tameva vidadhamyaham Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta Shraddhayarchitum Ichchati Tasya tasyachalam shraddham Tameva vidadhamyaham. Anyone else? Yo yo yang yang tanum bhakta Shraddhayarchitum Ichchati Tasya tasyachalam shraddham Tameva vidadhamyaham. Anyone else? Okay, no problem. Yaha, yaha, whoever. Yam, yam, whichever. Tonum, form of a demigod. Bhaktaha, devotee. Shraddhaya, with faith. Architum, to worship. Ichchati, desires. Tasya, tasya, to him. Achalam, steady. Shraddham, faith. Tam, that. Eva, surely. Vidadham, give. Aham, I. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, I am in everyone's heart as the super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Purport. God has given independence to everyone. Therefore, if a person desires to have material enjoyment and wants very sincerely to have such facilities from the material demigods, the Supreme Lord, as super soul in everyone's heart, understands and gives facilities to such persons. As the Supreme Father of all living entities, he does not interfere with their independence, but gives all facilities so that they can fulfill their material desires. Some may ask why the all-powerful God gives facilities to the living entities for enjoying this material world, and so lets them fall into the trap of the illusory energy. The answer is that if the Supreme Lord as Super Soul does not give such facilities, then there is no meaning to independence. Therefore, he gives everyone full independence, whatever one likes. But his ultimate instruction we find in the Bhagavad Gita. One should give up all other engagements and fully surrender unto him. That will make man happy. Both the living entity and the demigods are subordinate to the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the living entity cannot worship the demigod by his own desire, nor can the demigod bestow any benediction without the supreme will. As it is said, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, persons who are distressed in the material world go to the demigods, as they are advised in the Vedic literature. A person wanting some particular thing may worship such and such a demigod. For example, a diseased person is recommended to worship the sun god. A person wanting education may worship the goddess of learning, Saraswati. And the person wanting a beautiful wife may worship the goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. In this way, there are recommendations in the Shastras, or Vedic scriptures, for different modes of worship of different demigods. And because a particular living entity wants to enjoy a particular material facility, the Lord inspires him with a strong desire to achieve that benediction from that particular demigod. And so he successfully receives the benediction. The particular mode of the devotional attitude of the living entity toward a particular type of demigod is also arranged by the Supreme Lord. The demigods cannot infuse the living entities with such an affinity, but because he is the Supreme Lord, or the Supersoul who is present in the hearts of all living entities, Krishna gives impetus to man to worship certain demigods. The demigods are actually different parts of the universal body of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, they have no independence. In the Vedic literature, it is stated, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Supersoul is also present within the heart of the demigod. Therefore, he arranges through the demigod to fulfill the desire of the living entity. But both the demigod and the living entity are dependent on the Supreme Will. They are not independent. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, just to follow the train of thought or teaching that Krishna is giving here, the key verse is text 19, Bahunam Jamanamante Gyanavan Mampapadyade, that after many, many births of cultivating knowledge, one who is truly in knowledge surrenders unto Krishna. This is what he's saying here. Understanding that he, Krishna, is the source of everything, the cause of all causes. This phrase appears in the Brahma Samhita, in the very first verse, where Brahma says, Ishwarak Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anade Radhe Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. It's a very seminal verse. And there he's saying that Brahma, who's Brahma? He's the chief of all the demigods, the firstborn of all living creatures in this world. And he has an inconceivably long lifetime. And how does that happen? Well, first of all, you have to understand that his body is made almost entirely of intelligence. Whereas ours, so much matter, so much water, grosser. So his body is well nigh immortal. But it's not immortal because intelligence is also a material element. So after over 311 trillion years, he finally leaves his body and takes a new body. That's the time, the length of the whole universe is that long. After time, the universe expires and a new one is created after some time. So, Lord Brahma is one of these demigods. One can pray to him. And there are many others. And what Krishna is saying here in text 19 is that one who understands that behind all the demigods and behind everything else is myself, that I am the cause of all causes, the cause of everything that exists, then the wise one, he surrenders unto me. In other words, he tries to dovetail his activities with my desires, and in this way achieves the highest goal of life, which is no more birth, no more death. After leaving this body, go back to Godhead, resume our life of eternal bliss and knowledge in association with Krishna, with God. There is such a world, there is such a life, but we don't know about it now, and therefore we need this knowledge. So he says that in text 19, but in text 20 he says, but on the other hand, those whose knowledge has been stolen away by material desire. Kamais taistai vitigyana. Kamais is plural for kama, unlimited material desires. They cover your real knowledge. And so, papadyante anya devata. Now this is all within the context of the Vedic culture. So they surrender to the gods who can fulfill those desires. And if one understands, he reads in the Rig Veda and the other Vedas about heavenly planets. We don't have this thing, well, there's earth and then there's heaven. No, there's earth and then there's heavenly planets, and then there's the Vaikuntha world, which is the world beyond all birth and death, way beyond the heavenly planets of the demigods. So one of the most famous ones is Indraloka. This whole temple is named after a pastime that Krishna engaged in with Lord Indra. It's very interesting. It's coming up right now. Very nice festival. We're going to have a little hill of sweets that we make to symbolize Govardhan Hill. And then we'll have wonderful kirtan and circumambulate the hill. There's a whole pastime. And Indra, his yearly sacrifice, because he controls the weather. And for any agrarian community, you have to have regular rain, not too much, not too little, right? So he's a very important demigod. So the community, Krishna's in this agricultural community. He's growing up as a cowherd boy, and his father has so many cows. He's the king of the... So they had a yearly sacrifice that they would perform, Indra Jagya, so that Indra would send the rains at the right time and the right quantity, like that. So Krishna wanted to illustrate, it's very appropriate to what we're reading here. You don't have to worship any demigods. That's a diversion. That's a part of your material entanglement. Because the demigods can only give you some material benefit, which is, even if it lasts for thousands or millions of years in this heavenly planet, it still comes to an end. It doesn't solve your basic problem of bondage within the material body and birth and death. So, but the cowherd men, even though they're in this supreme abode and Krishna is there, they're worshipping Indra regularly. So Krishna comes up and he says they're preparing this elaborate sacrifice. He says, "Father, what are you doing?" He's only a small boy. He knows because he's God, but he's playing a game. So his father originally says, "Well, it's like if a young boy, he's like 7 years old, comes up to the father, he's at the kitchen table preparing the yearly tax returns. And the kid wants to know what his father's doing. What is he going to explain to him? So that he won't be able to understand it, So he's taking Krishna to be just as a little boy. He said, and then Krishna, he persists, and his father says, "Well, this is what we're doing." So Krishna, with his infinite charm, he convinces his father to forgo the Indra Jagya and use... Indra's watching this, from heaven, and use all the paraphernalia that has been collected to worship Govardhan Hill and the Brahmins and the cows. He outlines this whole festival. Big circumambulation. I walked around this hill. It's like 13 miles, in India, in Vrindavan. It's a wonderful. And on the path is Radhakund. That's what you also come upon, Radhakund. Anyway, it's a whole thing. And so he charms his father, and they use the very paraphernalia, so Indra becomes very, very angry. And this is very, it's very telling, because Indra the word for senses is Indriya. It's not an accident that his name is Indra. It means that he easily loses his intelligence because his senses are out of control. So Indra, he starts saying, "Well, I'll show these, cowherds, giving up my sacrifice." And he sends these clouds that are normally only reserved for devastation when the universe is going to come to an end. And there's some pastime I remember, I think maybe in the Krishna book, Nectar Devotion, they didn't want to go, because it's not that time. He said, don't worry, you go, and I'll follow you on my elephant. Yeah, this elephant Irabada. So he sends this cloud, and they send this unbelievable storm. There's rain, there's hail, huge blocks of hail coming down. It doesn't stop, and it's flooding. There's tremendous flooding going on. So what do the cowards do? What they always do. This is why they're Krishna devotees. They call out to Krishna, "Please save us," So he lifts the hill. He gets the hill. He's just 7 years old. And he gets on the hill somehow, and he lifts that hill up, and with one finger of his left hand, the small one. And he's holding this huge hill up, and he says, "Come on under. The rain won't affect you." And you might think, well, it's going to flood, it's come under the rain. No, everything's protected. So they go, and for 7 days and nights without sleeping, nobody sleeps, and everyone is just enjoying their intimate association with Krishna, glorifying him. It's a tremendous pastime. You'll see in the corner of each of the corners here, there's a little sculpture illustrating this. Very wonderfully done. So he's teaching exactly what Krishna is teaching us here in the Bhagavad Gita. And in a few verses we'll see that don't worship the demigods. They may give you some temporary benefit, yes, But that's just diverting you from your goal of getting out of the material world. You simply ask me. You approach me, you surrender to me, and I'll give you everything that you need, and ultimately bring you back to Godhead for eternity. If you get diverted to the demigods and you have faith, you see, this verse we read is all about faith. Yo-yo Shraddha architam. Shraddha is faith. If you want to worship Indra or Durga, there's many Durga worshippers. That's the material energy personified for material gain. Generally, you worship Durga not to go to heaven, but to get some material gain here in this world. So says, oh, you want to worship? Okay, I'll make your faith strong. He's in the heart. So you become very faithful, and you don't want to worship Krishna because you know that Krishna will take it away. Krishna doesn't award unlimited material benefits. If he's really merciful, he takes it away, so that you're more dependent on him, and you just pray with him. Prabhupada himself identified with this. There's a verse in the Krishna speaks to Yudhishthira in the 10th canto. He says, "Yasyaham anagurnami harishe tad danang shanai." I always forget the second half of the verse, but that's the word. That's the one part that Prabhupada would quote. And he's telling Yudhishthira, when I show my devotee my special mercy, I take everything away from him. And then, bereft of any wealth, his family kicks him out of the house. Basically, he says they don't want to. And now what? Now he's completely, all he has left is Krishna, which is what you want. That's the best benediction. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, let me, So Prabhupada said that's what happened. It has a wonderful life story. It's been written up in a beautiful biography by Satsut Maharaj called Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, the nectar of Srila Prabhupada's pastime. And he describes he had a very successful business. But he was also initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta, and so he used so much of his time to help the Gaudiya Math, which he was in. This is the forerunner of ISKCON. Very big in India in the early part of the century. It's from like 20 to 1950, about 30 years. Grew all over. And Prabhupada was, a very enthusiastic preacher, but he was a householder. He had a family, had 5 children, and a wife at home. But he would travel around. He was selling pharmaceuticals, that natural herbal Ayurvedic pharmaceuticals. And he had a successful business, but at the same time he was preaching and doing all this. So eventually his spiritual master told him, you have to spread Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking world. Basically he told him to come to either England or America, like that. But he had his family, so he wasn't doing it. And he tried to do it in India, but he kept failing one after another. So he got into his 60s, and he had this magazine that he was preaching in English. He was specifically told, because he was very good, he had a good English education in the Scottish Church's college, and his English was good, skillful writer. So he was writing a newspaper, a regular bi-weekly called Back to Godhead. I used to work on the magazine. When he came to America, he had suspended. But then he started again, and eventually I got to work on it, and it's still going on. Now it's a magazine, but the internet, there's all the internet. It's not so much as much read as before. But he was, he was writing it, and he was getting it printed somehow, and he had retired from family life. There's a whole thing I won't get into, how his wife wasn't supporting the printing, and she sold some of his books, and finally he said he left. So it's a traditional thing, when you get into your 50s, late 50s, you do that. So, but he was on his own. He really didn't have any institutional support or anything, and so he was scraping by somehow, printing the magazine, distributing. And one friend told him, if you're able to print books, that's more sturdy and it'll be long-lasting. People will keep it at home. You'll have more impact. So he took that to heart, and with tremendous effort over a period of 4 years, from 60 to like 64, he was able to print the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Each like 400-page books, He finally printed one book. He used that book to get some friends to help donate, get third segment. Very difficult. And so with those books, he said, it's now or never. He had turned 69, and if he's going to go to America, his health wasn't that strong, although he still had a lot of vigor. It's now or never. And somehow he got a free passage on one very pious lady's. She owned a steamship line, shipping. It wasn't a passenger ship. It wasn't a cruise ship. It was rough, and he'd never been on the ocean. He got very, very sick. He had 2 heart attacks. Somehow he made it to America. So as time went on, he would tell the story about how he identified with this verse that Krishna speaks, that he felt he really got the mercy. And at first it was painful. He was reluctant to take sannyas. It was inconceivable. He would have dreams. His spiritual master would come and say, you have to take sannyas. Finally took sannyas in 1959, I believe it was. So back to our verses here. So Indra eventually was chastised. He really, Krishna proved that you don't have to worship the demigod, just worship him. So then after Bahunam, then you had text 20, when the knowledge is stolen away by various material desires, one surrenders unto the demigods, according to one's nature, niyatak swaya, So then in the present verse, yo yam yam, that's an interesting phrase. I mean, whichever you want to worship. Now when I first read this, I was thinking, and Prabhupada would talk about this in his lecture sometimes, that if someone has absolutely no idea about the demigods, and really maybe very little faith in God himself, or you may be superficially religious, then you're going to worship some material people. All of this political thing, it's the political season now, right? And then we're coming up with the next 2 years and the president. That's the same thing. This idea of working, canvassing, donating, and going and voting, this is all a form of worship. Yes, I'll give you my support, because I have faith. That's the thing, is the faith. That my life will be better or something, There's some reason I do that. It's mundane, but it's the same principle. If you've lost faith in God, really, or that's just some ritual that you learned when you were a kid, In other words, but you have to have faith in something. If people that try to have faith in their own strength, but then they learn, yes, if we work together, we can accomplish more, like that. And especially, you have to have a leader or leaders. So they try to get your faith, and along with the faith, they try to get your money so that they can advertise and all this. It's the same principle. But then what happens? Your hopes are dashed. Your hopes are always dashed. Eventually. I mean, just think of the politicians. They turn out to be rascals, or whatever they promised doesn't really come. And even if it does, your life changes, and they can't help you with the real life problems, which is old age, disease, and death. So, boom, you put your faith in the wrong person. So this is happening in the Vedic culture. You have all these demigods you can put the faith in. So Krishna bestows from within that faith. You really want to worship them? Okay, you worship them. I remember I used to live in Miami for 6 years, back in the 80s. And we have a lot of guys come up, the devotees. We have a lot of devotees in Brazil. And sometimes they would come and visit, or, so there'd be some interaction. And we'd hear about this kind of worship they did. People would go out into the jungles, and they would, smoke a cigar, and they would offer this, and it was a mode of ignorance, But there's beings out there that they're worshiping, and there's whole thousands of millions of people believe in it, So you can believe in anything, It can be completely false, right? We have all these conspiracy theories and whatever. So, but the faith is there. And eventually, if it's not Krishna, that faith will be dashed. Your faith will be poorly directed, and you'll have to again be born. You'll forget everything again, and you'll go on. And whatever you've done in this life will be determinant of next life. So here Krishna is saying, I will make that faith strong. And Prabhupada makes it clear that whatever the demigods can give, or whatever the politicians can give, whatever anyone can give, is still coming from Krishna. He's empowering everybody to have faith in whatever, or to give some benediction that they can give. But because it's not directly Krishna, it's material. And because it's material, it's temporary. And it'll always disappoint you. You can never really solve your problems in this way. So he's going on, and he's giving a short little proof here how worship of anyone but him is ultimately not very intelligent. That's the conclusion he comes to. Any questions, discussion on text 21? Yes, we've got to activate those. Do we have a mic? Oh, you have one over that side, here. Yeah, because we have people out there.
Hare Krishna. Just a quick question about the pronunciation of some of the Shraddhaya and Architam. How do you say that together?
The word Shraddhayarchitam?
Shraddhayarchitam.
Every syllable, it's Shraddhayarchitam.
Shraddhayarchitam.
Yeah, it's actually Shraddha.
Shraddhayarchitam. Shraddhayarchitam.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, text 22. Sataya Shraddhaya Yuktas Tasyaradhanam Ikshate Ihate. Tasyaradhanam Ihate Labate Chatata Kaman Maya Babahitanitan. Endowed with such faith. So what Krishna has given in the previous verse is the faith, and now you're doing the worship. Endowed with such faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Purport. The demigods cannot award benedictions to their devotees without the permission of the Supreme Lord. The living entity may forget that everything is the property of the Supreme Lord, but the demigods do not forget. So the worship of demigods and achievement of desired results are due not to the demigods, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by arrangement. The less intelligent living entity does not know this, and therefore he foolishly goes to the demigods for some benefit. But the pure devotee, when in need of something, prays only to the Supreme Lord. Asking for material benefit, however, is not a sign of a pure devotee. A living entity goes to the demigods usually because he is mad to fulfill his lust. This happens when something undue is desired by the living entity, and the Lord himself does not fulfill the desire. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said that one who worships the Supreme Lord and at the same time desires material enjoyment is contradictory in his desires. Devotional service to the Supreme Lord and the worship of a demigod cannot be on the same platform, because worship of a demigod is material and devotional service to the Supreme Lord is completely spiritual. For the living entity who desires to return to Godhead, material desires are impediments. A pure devotee of the Lord is therefore not awarded the material benefits desired by less intelligent living entities, who therefore prefer to worship the demigods of the material world rather than engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. So you can see how this could be a barrier to worshiping Krishna. Like in India, right? People are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita and the pastimes and things, but they're covered over with like the modes of nature. You remember the modes of nature? We're going to learn more about them. That a mode, some mode. Like I don't know how many people play music, and there's different modes. Like in India, they have ragas. Right? Ragas are like modes. They can create a certain emotion. Right? They're suitable for a certain time of year, certain time of day, and they evoke certain emotions. In Western music, it's a little more rudimentary. But I remember growing up, I played instruments from childhood, and major mode, minor mode. You know, major mode is da 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 da. Minor mode is da 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 da. So it's like a little more down, you know. In other words, the minor mode evokes anxiety, separation, whatever, Major mode is, all right, that's a party, So. But that's very crude compared to Indian music. Is very sophisticated. There's thousands of different ragas, So a mode of nature is a kind of way in which your mind and emotions work together, and it's going to be described in more detail in chapter 14. But to be very, we all know what they are. We may not know the names. The mode of passion, for instance. Mode of passion means someone who's really into enjoying. The senses are strong, and he's into it, and therefore he's really into making money. So you have to get the money, and in order to buy it, and maybe he or she succeeds, and you enjoy for some time, and life is good. Let's do it, and going along like that. But that is ultimately, it covers the soul. And if you come in contact with this kind of philosophy, it's like, are you guys crazy? The 4 regulative principles, that's my life, I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'm 23, forget it, But this is why it's good not to get smashed by the material energy, but to get at least kicked a little bit, so that you start to wonder what's it's really like, what's it's all about. But when it's in a society like this, the mode of passion and ignorance is very prominent. Ignorance means much more prone to, yes, you want to enjoy, but you generally overdo it. Like you'll drink, but you'll drink too much, and you'll sleep too much, and you'll harm yourself, and then you'll become easily angered, and you don't keep clean. All these symptoms are described. And madness comes. It's very dangerous, this mode of ignorance. So mode of passion and ignorance, if you're really in those modes, this kind of philosophy and thought, and it won't interest you. It's just like I always give the example, because we got a bar on the corner, right? I mean, they may sell pizza, but it's a bar, basically, right? So it's just 50 feet away. So you make a choice. You come here, and then should I visit the Hare Krishnas? Nah, I want to go. And after a while, it's not even a thing, It's it's near the Hare Krishna. I would never go in there. And the people who come here, they would never go in the bar. Just incompatible, right? But over time, who really is enjoying? I mean, come on, you can self-destruct through drugs and alcohol. We know that it's a very dangerous path to take, and we've probably known people who have done that. So, but that's the mode of ignorance. Mode of goodness is where you're much more self-controlled, peaceful. You like to spend time in the country, cleanliness, and you're more philosophically inclined. You're inclined to maybe inquire about these subjects. More likely to walk in the door. So, but these are someone. You notice he says the kama. The whole thing started out with text 20. Kama istaista jnana. Kama is basically sex desire, but it really covers all kinds of selfish desires. That's the symptom of the mode of passion. So if someone is really in the mode of passion, they'll worship Indra, for going to heaven or prosperity in this world and like that, But someone who's not will inquire and learn to worship Krishna for eternal happiness, and that's the idea. So here this verse says, with that faith, I supply the faith, text 21, and with that faith, they worship their chosen God, Tasya, of that demigod, they worship. And they get their karma, they get some result. But it's ultimately given by me. But people don't understand that. They think, oh, I'm glad I worshipped Indra. Thank you very much, Indra. So this is the story. But what is the result? What is the nature of those benedictions? That comes up in the next verse. And if there are no questions, I'll repeat. And this is kind of the end of the lesson about needing to worship demigods. Andavatu param tesham tadbhavat yalpamedasam devam devya joyanti madbhakta yanti mamapi. So here's the conclusion. Men of small intelligence, Alpamedasa, worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. Purport. Some commentators on the Bhagavad Gita say that one who worships a demigod can reach the Supreme Lord. But here it is clearly stated that the worshippers of demigods go to the different planetary systems where various demigods are situated. Just as a worshipper of the sun achieves the sun, or a worshipper of the demigod of the moon achieves the moon. Similarly, if anyone wants to worship a demigod like Indra, he can attain that particular god's planet. It is not that everyone, regardless of whatever demigod is worshipped, will reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is denied here. For it is clearly stated that the worshippers of the demigods go to the planets in the material world. But the devotee of the Supreme Lord goes directly to the supreme planet of the personality of Godhead. Here the point may be raised that if the demigods are different parts of the body of the Supreme Lord, then the same end should be achieved by worshipping them. However, worshippers of the demigods are less intelligent because they don't know to what part of the body food must be supplied. Some of them are so foolish that they claim that there are many parts and many ways to supply food. This isn't very sanguine, meaning intelligent. Can anyone supply food to the body through the ears or eyes? They do not know that these demigods are different parts of the universal body of the Supreme Lord. And in their ignorance, they believe that each and every demigod is a separate god and a competitor of the Supreme Lord. Not only are the demigods parts of the Supreme Lord, but ordinary living entities are also. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the Brahmins are the head of the Supreme Lord, the Kshatriyas are his arms, the Vaishyas are his waist, the Shudras are his legs, and all serve different functions. Regardless of the situation, if one knows that both the demigods and he himself are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, his knowledge is perfect. But if he does not understand this, he achieves different planets where the demigods reside. This is not the same destination the devotee reaches. The results achieved by the demigods' benedictions are perishable because within this material world, the planets, the demigods, and their worshippers are all perishable. Therefore, it is clearly stated in this verse that all results achieved by worshipping demigods are perishable. Antavat, that first word, means perishable. And therefore, such worship is performed by the less intelligent living entity. Because the pure devotee, engaged in Krishna consciousness in devotional service of the Supreme Lord, achieves eternal blissful existence that is full of knowledge, his achievements and those of the common worshipper of the demigods are different. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. His favor is unlimited. His mercy is unlimited. Therefore, the mercy of the Supreme Lord upon his pure devotees is unlimited. So you see, there's an argument there. This is the end of that particular section, and here he's condemning it, ultimatum. And it's not just that worship of the demigods is condemned. It's worship of anything. This idea of worship. Let's analyze what does that really mean. The first thing is that you're in need. You're in need of something, and you have to go somewhere, and you can't provide it yourself. There's a whole huge medical structure in America, multi-trillion dollars, because people get sick and they can't cure it themselves. They can't, they tried going to CVS, but whatever they try, it doesn't work, so they have to go to the doctor. So that's a form of worship. You have faith. You have to have faith, right? And this is what this is a big thing in America, and not just back in the early 20th century. They used to be traveling, or maybe the 19th century. The guys would go around in their carts and they'd be selling some remedy for whatever ails you, like that. And innocent people from the country, they would gather around. Oh, this is amazing, and they would give the money and they would go on. So this is why we have an FDA. This is why we have a Food and Drug Administration, so that these doctors and these so-called doctors can't spin around and convince you to give them their money, your hard-earned money, for remedies that don't work, because you don't know. You have to have faith. So that's why, okay, that's right, MD. I'm an MD and I'm certified, and like that. Okay. So that faith is, but that's also ultimately futile. If that's all the kind of worship, it's kind of a worship. You're giving your money, you're giving your attention, you give your faith, and hope to get cured, and I mean, not all doctors are criminals, they also have, but the problem is, if that's all you're trying to do to solve your material problem, because disease is a big one of the four, right? Birth, death, old age, and disease, then you're foolish. In other words, you're still going to get ultimately sick, you're going to die, get another body, and get sick all over again. So ultimately, you're not really that intelligent. So this is what Krishna is saying. Andabat, because the fruits, the phala, no matter what demigod you worship and what benediction you get, which really comes from me, but that's another point. If it's material, it's temporary. But your problems are permanent as long as you have a material body. So you need to find that person to worship who can help you cure, give you instruction to cure the ultimate disease, which is the body itself. The material body itself is a disease. Yes, it can be more diseased and you want to have a healthy body, but ultimately the disease of the soul is the material body itself, which is caused by kama, which is caused by that original love of God, prema, which has been curdled, if you will, and becomes kama. What's the difference? Desire to satisfy my own senses is kama. Desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is prema. One is suicidal for the soul, meaning that repeated birth and death, birth and death. As long as you're trying to satisfy your own senses, then you'll get a body to try to keep satisfying those senses. And because you don't know that there's so much sin that you're performing, you're going to lose the human form of body. We're reading that in the morning class. Remember, you said everyone is punishable in this world because everyone's in ignorance, and they're performing sins even unknowingly. So the Yamadutas come, and some are more punishable than others, according to. But do we want to stay in this round and round of suffering and trying the wrong remedy? We're trying to solve the problems with the wrong remedy, which is material remedy. So Krishna is saying, if you have some faith in some god or some person or some medicine or whatever it is, whatever you get from that, if it, that's coming from me ultimately, but that's not the solution to your problem. That's just putting it off. You've misplaced your faith. The whole point is where to place your faith, and where your faith goes, your action goes, your worship goes, like that. And that's what Krishna is trying to teach you here. He said, ultimately just place the faith in me. And how to do it practically? In this age, just chant. Just begin chanting the holy name. If you chant this, and this is association. You're associating with God directly through the sound vibration. Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna himself, has taught us through this Shikshastika. I don't have time to give the whole thing, maybe tonight. But he deals with this. He's teaching us how to pray. What should we pray for, and who should we pray for? Well, obviously we should pray to Krishna, but what should we pray for? Nadanang nasundadin kapitang vajagadisha kamaye mama janmani janmani shade bhavata bhakta dahoituki tvahi. So he goes through some of the people normally worship, pray for. Wealth and women, a good wife, good husband. Wealth and women, followers, the fruits of mundane piety, which is what he's talking about here. Liberation from this world of limitless anxiety. Even the liberation without Krishna consciousness, no thank you, as he's saying, Wealth and women followers, the fruits of mundane piety, liberation from this world of limitless anxiety. For me, O Lord, these common goals have not the slightest worth. Let me serve you purely now and in each future birth. Now the paradox of that is that if you really serve Krishna purely, now, then it won't be long before you don't take birth again at all. But he says, I don't care. I'm not going to go for anything material. Kama is taista, I'm giving that up. I want all that kama to be turned into prema, and therefore I'm simply worshiping you. My prayer is, please give me pure devotional service. And that's what this Damodar mantra is all about. Is that Damodar is a manifestation of Krishna, who's, I like to say, well, Krishna is the ultimate lovable person and the ultimate loving person. If we love him, we'll experience a level of love and exchange that is inconceivable on the material platform. What we experience on the material platform, which admittedly is the only, real happiness in this world, to love and be loved, and that whole thing is so powerful. But it's tragic because it changes. Just because we change, we grow older. Someone dies or they give up on you, and it's disaster, and it's just temporary. But it's a reflection of the ultimate happiness. But wouldn't it be wonderful to have that eternal love for someone, and it's always fresh and new, and you're always experiencing it, and it goes on. And that's what love of God is. And it's all in varieties of rasas. You want to be God's friend, you can be God's friend. You want to be a servant, you can be a loving servant for eternity. Parent, it's there. That's what Yashoda is doing. She's ideal. She's but that we can follow in her footsteps, or Nanda Maharaj, we can have a fatherly or motherly relation, even a conjugal relation with Krishna. But the whole idea is that you're simply acting out of love. You're trying to please Krishna. Because we're part and parcel of Krishna, then we become ecstatic as well. This is a very important concept, and I'll have a couple of minutes. One of the Vedanta sutras. What does Vedanta mean? Vedanta means the end of knowledge, the ultimate knowledge. Srila Prabhupada's name reflects the whole philosophy. Bhakti Vedanta. The knowledge ultimately ends in bhakti. Bhakti means this exchange of love with Krishna, eternal exchange. So that's the ultimate end. And it's all coming from the scripture. So in this Vedanta Sutra, there's a sutra, means little aphorisms, that are the essence of all Vedic knowledge in this Vedanta Sutra. But it's very difficult to understand, so there's a commentary, which is really the ultimate end, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, which we also have, the next book in our library. So, one of the aphorisms about Krishna, about God, is Anandamayo Vyasat. Ananda is bliss. Maya means made of, composed of. So, Vyasat means by his activities, by his understanding Krishna's, we understand that he's always full of bliss. Even when he's killing these demons, he's having a good time. You know, it's recreation for him. You know what I'm saying? That's why devotees take relish in hearing, oh, how he killed this demon, that demon, you know. And I don't have time tonight, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our greatest acharyas, he has given a whole list. You listen to the killing of, Krishna killing Aghasura, who's this big, Agha means sin, and Asura means demon. So he personified sin. He took the form of this huge python, and 8 miles long, and he opened his mouth, and he was hoping Krishna would walk in there with his friends, which he did ultimately, but then Krishna expanded himself and suffocated him from within, it's a whole thing. So by hearing these pastimes of how he killed these demons, you also kill demonic tendencies in yourself. Yeah, like Putana is the false guru, I think. If you killed how he killed Putana, then that'll protect you against getting, fooled by some false gurus, It's very wonderful. I'll read the list sometime. Remind me. So, but the point is, Krishna is always enjoying. Even when he's killing the demons, he's dancing with the gopis here, and then, this big bull comes to try to destroy it, and he kills this bull over Stasra, and then Radhakund is born, is created after that pastime. That's part of it. I don't know if you heard that. So anyway, the point is that the material benefits that we may get from worshiping some demigod or some politician or our boss or something like that are all temporary and simply divert us from our real goal and our real dharma, which is direct that worship and that faith toward Krishna, and ultimately you will not be cheated. You will be given the greatest blessing, even in this life. You will find that you can somehow live in this crazy world we have here, where depression and anxiety is like off the charts, because everyone can see everything is the nuclear war is about to start. I mean, that's what they're telling it. Maybe, more. I mean, I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. Most of you are too young to remember it. I don't know if there's anyone here who is old enough. But that was like, I was 14 years old, and we didn't go to school. We just watched the TV, and it looked like it was building up, and everyone thought, there's a song Bob Dylan wrote. You all heard of Bob Dylan. And a hard rain is going to fall. He was sitting in New York City, and he wrote that during this missile crisis. It's hard rain, bombs are coming. Everyone, this could be it. So, all right, so maybe it's it. I mean, there's only a 20% chance. And that's a pretty good chance, that it's all over. Well, I mean, we have to squeeze those beads. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I'm telling you, I do not want to survive. They say, well, here's the best place to go to survive a nuclear war. No, thank you. I'm going out on the beach. I'm going to take me, Hare Krishna, right? I mean, okay, a big flash, body disintegrates, and Hare Krishna, you go back to Godhead. So therefore, we can laugh about it, but that's actually what we need to do. Because whether it's an atomic bomb, I'm closer than everyone else in this room to probably leave my body without the atomic bomb. But one way or another, we're going to leave it. So at that time, at that point, we need to be free of any kind of material desire. Just call out to Krishna. and chant. So between now and that time, whether it's the bombs coming or just nature, we should cultivate Krishna consciousness so when the time comes, we can remember Krishna, chant his name, and fulfill life's mission. That's what it takes. Okay, it's late. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you for coming. We'll convene again tomorrow. Yeah, text 24. Hare Krishna. Uh-oh.